Guys, welcome back to All Things Black. This is Sean, your host. I have a new friend here.
Miku. Hi, I'm Dominique, day hunter, and I am African American, Saponi Native American, Irish, and Polish descent.
Okay. And if you want, Dominique does poetry, as well as spoken word. And so can you tell them where they can find your work at?
Absolutely. So y'all can find me on Instagram at DDAYE Hunter or on Twitter at the same handle. And you can also find my work, poetry, hip hop, and everything on my website, which is ddayhunter.com.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So me and Dominique are going to be talking about colorism today. So our first question is, what does the word colorism mean to you?
To me, colorism is a form of favoritism. I mean, it's deeper than favoritism. I would say it's preference and privilege given to lighter skinned people, lighter tone people, and or I guess assuming that somebody else is better than because of their skin tone. So making assumptions of people based on their skin tone.
All right. Okay. So our next question is, what do you believe are some examples of colorism?
Ooh.
All
There's
right,
so
I know that.
many. um, I would definitely say, I know we're kind of going to talk about this a little bit later, but in relationships, I would definitely say that I see people, whether it's men or women or non-gender specific people, that they choose a preference sometimes between like liking someone who's darker skin or liking someone who's lighter skin, or somebody who is darker skin, like a man may prefer like lighter skinned women or vice versa, like a darker skinned woman might prefer to be like with a lighter skinned man or a white man. So I'd say in relationships, I would say definitely in the workplace, because it goes beyond skin tone, even into, hair and how we speak
Right.
and everything like that. So I would say in every aspect of life, colorism has its dirty fingers in our
Yeah, I
lives.
agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, why do you believe people have negative attitudes about dark skin, and why do you believe people have negative attitudes about light skin if you think they do?
Well, this all comes down from systematic colonization. And so the slavery of African people, Black people, and Native American people, people of color, um, it was literally a system to divide and conquer. So literally they said, okay, well, if you were to take these people who are of, pure, almost pure African heritage, and you either assault them and bear children with them or marry them, you can kind of divide and conquer. And in that way, people people of color wouldn't be as likely to join forces together and their commonalities against colonization, against white settler colonialism.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So our next question is, what role do you believe traditional media plays in perpetuating colorist stereotypes?
Well, again, I think that stemming from colonization, the lies that we're told that dark skin, thick curly hair, just anything that resembles blackness or anything that's not European or European standard, that it's somehow like backwards or wrong or even animalistic, like, kind of stemming from evolutionary science and Darwinism and all these different things. So, really, the media, unfortunately, a lot of it is controlled by people who still have these mindsets or these are work within these systems and who benefit from these systems. So it's definitely not by accident. It's created by design to disempower people of color in order to maintain the hierarchy of colonialism. I hope I answered the question. I've
No,
been going on a rant, but
no, that wasn't a rant. You definitely answered it. Yeah. So because they're in power, they control how people are seen. So
exactly.
yeah. Okay. No. What role do you believe colorism plays in dating and marriage?
I've definitely experienced colorism in dating and marriage. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, I feel like there's this preference of um, people of color kind of grapple with all the time, preferring like light skinned people. I would say usually, I mean, of course,
No,
people like all
it's a
types, but
preference.
yeah, it's definitely a preference. And or assuming that, even for myself, like, oh, like, why are you dating somebody who's so much darker than you, and so I feel like it's very degrading. It's purposeful to or its purpose is to degrade and, like I said, disempower dark skinned people, and it hurts dark skinned people the most, but it also has impacts, like it's like a ripple effect, so it affects our entire community as well. And so I personally, one example I can share is that I remember dating a guy who was darker than me, and we're kind of just talking about these topics, and he made a comment and said, "Oh, well, yeah, like I think it's cool that you're black," because he was actually Native American, so I should disclose that. He's very dark skinned. And so he said, "But if you were darker, I wouldn't date you."
Mm,
And for me, that hit me hard because obviously I'm very aware of that I have a very light skin tone. I'm aware that it brings me privilege, but the people I was raised with, like my sisters, my nieces, my mom, like they're all different shades and colors. But I have, like my sister, she's chocolate skin tone. So to me, it's just like if you're gonna say that you're saying it about her, then you're kind of like saying about me too. Like
right,
I know I benefit from privilege, but I just don't take that. So
right,
needless to say, that relationship ended very quickly. But it's just things like that that kind of, even within myself, it's like, okay, you're basically rejecting the essence of who I am. And to me, what makes me beautiful, what makes me unique and strong, and makes our people unique and strong. So I definitely see it, and kind of extending from that, from relationships into children, like interracial children, or interracial children. I feel like there's definitely a preference. Like when you see a mixed baby, like a lot of people, when I was born, like I said, I have lighter skin, but when I was born, people were like, "Oh, you didn't get your dad's blue eyes, or you didn't get this, or you know what I mean? Like you still have
mhm,
dark hair, or you look like a Mexican." Like just still, again, like just glorifying those, blonde hair, blue eyes, and those like features, or even had like a relative that said, "Oh, well, thank goodness, like you came out and you had like good hair from our side of the family." And I was just
mhm,
like, first of all, no. If you tried to like do my hair, you would not be able to do it. I
mhm,
mean, but second of all, like, just I don't know, getting defensive, because, again, like to me, being black, being a person of color, it's such a it's it's such a blessing to me. Like, I feel like there's so many, benefits, like as much a discrimination, that we go through. I just feel like, there's so much power. Like there's power in our melanin. Like there's a reason why. And even scientifically, our pineal gland is our third eye, and that's what helps to process that melanin, or our melanin helps us to keep our third eye active, and that's how it
right.
helps us be such spiritual, amazing people. So again, I feel like I'm ranting,
No, you're not ranting.
but
There's no ranting here.
okay.
You just speak your truth. There's no
Okay.
ranting.
Yeah, so and I've definitely seen it. I mean, like I said, just speaking from my own experience, my niece, well, she's my niece, but we're the same age, so she's like my sister. And as I mentioned, she has dark chocolate skin tone, and just everything from people just kind of like not like assuming that we're related, or even to like my sister. Like my sister would come up and pick me up from preschool. I never forget this, and like the white teacher was like not trying to let her take me, even though her name was on the list. And I just like remember crying. And I mean, I guess we could all go on story after story, but I've definitely noticed it in education as well.
Yeah,
My niece, she we were going to college at the same time, and we're raised by the same people. We're both had the same level intellect. And I just heard story after story from her, mentioning just discrimination in the classroom, that she would be writing these awesome papers and like go take them to the writing center and they'd be like, this is great. And then she would still be getting like low grades on them. And meanwhile, the same class, like with the same teacher, there's another student, like a white male, who's like, oh, I forgot to do my paper. Let's take a vote and see if, and then the teacher says, well, let's take a vote and see if he should get extra time. But then when she was late with an assignment, like it wouldn't even give her partial credit. So it's just
Right.
those like
No,
things.
there. Yeah,
Yeah, like,
that's the thing.
yeah, definitely. So, and knowing that like my light skin more than likely gave me privilege to get better grades than her, like things like that. So, it's just why I want to speak out about it and why I'm just so vocal. And because of, I guess, my appearance, some people like, no, I'm black or part black,
Yeah.
and some people like don't. And so sometimes, like, I don't know, like sometimes it's not all like great either because I'm the one hearing like
Mm.
the racism that no one else, like they wouldn't
Oh
really
yeah,
say
yeah,
on other
yeah,
people. And
yeah.
then I'm like, like, and then I tell them, and then they get like totally red because they didn't know. So it's one of those things,
Mm.
ingrained in people, and they don't. Sometimes they're not aware of it, but a lot of times I think they are. And it's not just, and one thing I would like to say is it's not just amongst, white people versus people of color. It's amongst people of color as
Yeah,
well.
it's yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely there's white colorism, which is a term I got from someone. I don't since I can't tell you who it was, but they made up the term white colorism, which is white people's preference for lighter skinned black people. And then there's also the intraracial colorism as well, which is black people's preference for light skinned black people as well. So, and you could say that for the Asian community, the Hispanic community, or other communities as well. But I'm black, so I'm talking about the black community.
Right.
Um, so, I mean, yeah, it's 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 um it's a thing, yeah. And so I
Yeah.
get you're saying since some people view you as being white passing, they are more willing to say certain things that they wouldn't have said.
Yeah, I've rarely gotten white people who think I'm white. Like
Yeah,
usually they think I'm like Puerto Rican or like I guess you could say Hispanic white. So
right,
like
right, right.
white with a little bit of Native American, which I am.
Yeah,
But yeah, mostly they think I'm like some very rarely they'll think I'm like Italian or something. But yeah, they I think they know that I'm not like fully white most of the time. They think I'm
right,
Hispanic, but it's still definitely a preference. Another thing that I've experienced is that you know I'll have friends who are either white or mostly Native American or Hispanic, and they don't really have other, I guess you could say, like, have other black friends or
right,
anybody that they're close to. And so it's just very interesting spending time with them and then kind of taking it out of the context of being in a situation where there's a lot of different, variety of black
right,
people. I remember one time, my friend. And usually, like we do music and things like that. Him and his girlfriend, and we were downtown. And I don't know what kind of festival was going on, but I live in Phoenix, and the Black community in Phoenix is slowly but surely growing and
okay,
becoming more prominent. But it's kind of like had a slow start off, at least from my experience.
yeah,
So I don't know what was going on, but I was really excited because I'm from the East Coast. I was born and raised in New Jersey. My family, so my family is from North Carolina. So, I'm just used to being surrounded by Black people and Black culture.
right,
And so when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, I just instantly got so excited. And so it was just interesting. Like, I guess I was so wrapped up in my own, excitement that when I did turn and like see, his girlfriend was fine. I think she's more used to diversity, but seeing my friend who was from a rural reservation community, like amongst all these Black people, like he almost seemed like he didn't know what to do, or like not like hateful, but definitely uncomfortable. And I was thinking, this is really interesting because you listen to hip hop and like you listen to Black music and appreciate Black
yeah,
culture, but when you're around Black people, you're not comfortable. So it's, those things too. I think that a lot of times people, and that's what I always say. I'm like, if you say that you have Black friends because you're friends with me, that's not enough. Like, it's not enough. Like, I'm sorry, but you can't just say, oh, yeah, like I have Black friends and like Dominique is the only one. Because people do, I feel like they can access Black culture through lighter skinned people. I feel like because we're more palatable to them.
Mm, okay.
That's my experience, though.
Oh, okay. That was a really interesting perspective. What role do you believe colorism plays in dating and marriage?
Me being light skinned, I'm tokenized a lot,
Okay.
and fetishized,
Same with me. I'm like fetish,
fetish,
same
fetishes,
fetish, fetish,
fetishized. Yes, fetishized,
or is it fetish?
fetishized, fetishized.
Okay.
Okay. um, yeah, I do feel like I'm fetishized a lot. Um, just because, I don't know. It's just like, I feel like in dating, people will make comments of like, oh, I love like your curly hair. Or like, not to be crass, but guys are just like, oh, like, I like your butt or whatever. But then it's like I said, just mentioning, I don't know. I'm just a little bit careful, I guess. Like, usually when I start dating someone, I don't know if this is weird or if other people do this, but I usually like to ask them like other people that they've dated. If they've only dated other light skinned girls, I mean, I'm not gonna fully judge them, but I'm definitely gonna like be more observant of how
Mhm.
they treat darker skinned girls and how they relate to them.
Yeah.
um but yeah, I definitely would say, in my experience, for me, my mother is Black and Native American,
Okay.
and then my dad is Irish and Polish, so he's white. Um, and I would definitely say that, just from, I guess, observing not just my parents' relationship, but having that perspective and seeing other interracial relationships, where, uh, a Black person's married to a white person, especially a Black woman, I guess in this case, I would
Right.
say that a lot of times, marrying a white man is seen as elevating your status,
Mm.
um, and kind of, if you will, like getting away from where you come from, or
Yeah.
getting away from, like, especially, if that person may be coming from a situation where they're coming from poverty, or just, or just not having wealth, you
Right.
know, a lower class or lower economic status, marrying white can kind of feel like, okay, I can attain this level
Yeah.
of more economic security
Yeah.
because of white privilege. And then on the vice versa of that, I feel like definitely I've seen, Black men, who date either like white women or light skinned women, or whether it's white or of other races or Black, um, kind of use them as like a trophy. Not saying
Yeah. That's
everybody,
it's
but
true.
I definitely could say, that I've experienced that with my friends and my family, or even like, if there are a couple that are both like darker skin, kind of like holding that over a Black woman's head, like, oh, well, I could just go be with like this kind of woman, you know what I mean? And they're like lighter skin and like younger, and so really you know, devaluing dark skinned people and dark skinned women. So that's colorism, obviously, like racism, and even ageism,
Yeah.
especially like for
Yeah.
older Black women. I just feel like as a Black woman, the older that you are, and especially if you're darker skin tone, that society sees you as, non-essential, I
Yeah.
feel, especially if
Yeah.
you're, and then if you're a mother, even more so, and
No, I
so on
agree.
and so forth. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So our next question is, what do you believe is the difference between colorism and preference? Is there a difference?
Hmm. I would say yes. Okay. How would I put this? I feel like colorism is the shaky ground that we all live in or
Yeah.
live on. And
Mhm.
so it's almost like the tectonic plates, right? Or there's tectonic plates that we stand on, and that's really, our identity as people. And I feel like colorism creates these shifts and these schisms between
Yeah.
us. And so I would say that, with that being said, I would say I respect people's right to have preferences.
Right.
People have preferences, but I feel like a preference should come after really having a lot of self reflection,
Right.
education, and questioning, and whether it's something that's going on up here, journaling or something, or taking a class. I just feel like the more you're educated, the more you can understand, if your preferences are actually based in colorism,
Right.
or if they're not. So I believe everybody has a right, but I feel like, for myself, I know that, um, I don't know. I have preference for other types of things, like more like culture. Like, do we come from the same, culture,
Right.
understanding, or even like, um, intelligence?
No, no,
Like, I
I
feel
see
like,
what you're saying. I,
yeah,
I feel the same way. I feel like and I didn't think about that. I mean, it's true. Like, if you're gonna form a preference, maybe do it after you've done like the work to see, why. But on the other hand, I think preferences like I prefer someone that does not make colorist jokes. I prefer someone that is intelligent. I
right,
prefer someone that has a car, say. Um, I prefer someone that, if they're not in school, they have a job.
right,
Actually, I'm older now, so no, I prefer someone that has a job.
yeah,
So I think those are preferences. Now, when you get into color preferences, I mean, I guess one could argue. I don't know about color preferences. I have a hard time. Like I guess I understand racial preferences because it's about like culture.
right, yeah,
Color preferences. I'm willing to. I'm willing to hear valid color preferences, but for me, I know that if I was talking to someone and because some people say, well, it's okay, to have a preference. Um, it's okay to have a preference as long as it isn't color. And I guess I could, eh, I don't know. I guess I could agree with that. I just know for me personally, if I was talking to someone and I asked them what's their preference and they said light skin, I would think that it's no way I would believe they had any interest in me. It's
yeah,
no way I would believe that they were actually interested in dating me. And I just wouldn't believe that. Now, that could just be me personally, but if I'm with someone and they tell me that's their color preference, I mean, for me, it's just not something that I probably could go forward with. Um, or if someone's like, "You're my first dark skinned girl," not something I could go forward with.
yeah,
Um, so I don't know. I guess the colorism and preference thing is kind of shaky.
mm,
Because for me, most color preferences are just built on colorism and white
right,
supremacy and um, you know, the our want to be closer to whiteness. So
right,
I don't know. I guess you could have a non-colorist reason for like I talked to like in one of my studies, a girl said she prefers darker men because her dad is dark skinned. Now that I can see as like a valid
hmm,
color preference, but when it's like I prefer light skinned women because dark skinned women are ugly because that's what some of them say. It's absolutely colorist to believe that a person of that every light or once I saw a man said that if it was a dark skinned girl and a light skinned girl. Now he didn't ask. their, perceived attractiveness according to like his standard or societal standards. He just said, "Oh, it was light skin." That was two different men. So I feel like if it's widespread, you don't care how attractive one or the other, or you don't care how one or the other acts. If it's just simply like just the light skin, to me that's
Right.
colorist. So or you to say I prefer darker men because light skinned men are feminine
Mhm.
color. So, but I don't know if you could, but yeah, like the thing with I prefer darker men because my dad's dark skinned. And that way, I don't see that as being colors. I see that as loving your dad and wanting a man like your dad. So,
Right.
there are non-colorist colors,
Mhm.
I guess, but most of the time when it's towards women, rarely have I heard, you know, a non-colorist preference. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess when I've heard like I preferred when I did hear someone who preferred dark skin, I prefer darker skinned women because to me, um, they are underrated or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's what they said.
Mhm.
Um, to me, uh, that there's nothing necessarily wrong with that,
Mhm.
but but then there's comes problems like I prefer because I did a study on a YouTube study on like color preferences. Um,
Mhm.
and I guess when they'll come in like I prefer dark skinned women because they usually have um, bigger booties or they have better vagina or something sexual.
Mm.
I mean, I feel like there's really all kind of ways you really can look at it. There really is.
Yeah. I mean, not that they're wrong, but then again, it's like, okay, well, also we know that through colonization and slavery, that dark-skinned Black women were also the subject of a lot of sexual violence,
Yeah,
and Black women in general. But especially dark-skinned Black women seen as really as in the view of white supremacists as animals to be bred,
yeah,
and so there's a very animalistic, I mean, that's a thin line
yeah.
between beautiful sexual appreciation and something that is really harmful. So
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I definitely
yeah.
noticed in my study when people said that they preferred light skin, the reasons they gave were like pretty, they don't do too much, just pretty, just beautiful, yeah, pretty, pretty, pretty. That was most of the responses. But when you
Hmm.
ask them, or,
Hmm.
a lot of the responses, instead of saying why they preferred light skinned women, it turned into why light skinned women were better than dark skinned women. So a lot of their answers were just because dark girls are ugly, because da da da, because so their answers, insulted dark skinned women rather than even answering the question of why they prefer light. On the other end of that, when people who I lost my train of thought. On the other end of that, of people who did prefer dark skinned women, I realized that a lot of their reasons were completely different from a lot of those who answered light skinned women. So
Hmm.
a lot of their reasons were something they prefer dark skinned women because something a light skinned woman had done, or I prefer dark skinned women because
Hmm.
light skinned women are too stuck up. So really, you want a
Hmm.
light skinned woman, but you feel like you can't get one. So dark skinned women are like the second option. So there was a lot of I prefer dark skinned women because light skinned women act a certain way. There was a lot of either a sexual reason why they preferred dark skinned women, or there were just some people who said that's just my preference, but I found that a lot of the reasons for light skin preference and dark skin woman preference are very different. They're very different.
Hmm.
Yeah, they're very different.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Interesting.
So our next question, I feel like we already kind of Well, not really. Okay. How do you believe gender intersects with colorism?
Uh, well,
You
this is
want me to
deep.
answer first?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I can kind of go, yeah, off of you.
Okay. So, how I think gender intersects with colorism is that I think in the Black community, um, okay, to the world, I guess America prefers from my study, America prefers lighter skinned Black people. They see them as more palatable. They fit in more with the culture of their workplace, or they don't see them as aggressive. So that's America's view. Um, and then and then also with women, they get like a dark skinned women, they get like a triple oppression. There's a race, there's a color, and there's a gender. So
Right.
if we move into like dating and marriage, you have the dark skinned Black male that is preferred in dating, and you have the light skinned Black woman that is preferred in dating. And the qualities that people find positive about dark skinned Black men, they are like they say, if they were to get in trouble, a dark man would fight for them or shoot for them, or the same qualities that white people use to stereotype Black people are
Mm,
actually positive things in dating. That they're just dark skinned Black men are just the pinnacle of manliness for Black.
mm,
On that other end, dark skinned Black women, those same traits are given to them. They're too aggressive, they're too
mm,
loud, they're too whatever. And then there's the light skinned Black woman that's preferred. She's seen as, the most feminine, nicer, sweeter, more attractive. But then on the other end of that, those traits are given to light skinned Black men as well. So they're seen as feminine. People call them gay. People
mm.
say that they are too soft. I don't want anybody that's in the mirror as long as me. So that's how I believe it intersects.
Okay. Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I really, man, you hit the nail on the head with the aggressiveness.
Yeah.
And that was the thing I was going to mention with the relationships, but tying it into the with gender, I do feel like Black women, dark skinned Black women, are seen as aggressive. And kind of going back for a second, I do feel like people when they start dating me think, because I mean, I'm a balance. I'm a Libra rising. So I got, the sweet side and I got the strong side. And so I feel like, especially when people are getting to know me, I'm quiet, but I can be bubbly. And they just kind of get this assumption that I'm soft and that I'm too nice, that I could be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, now I got to put my foot down and put up the reinforcing boundaries with you, and all of a sudden now I'm an angry, crazy Black woman.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're
And it's
saying.
like, and I do definitely see that when it comes to gender. I feel like you said, Black women are just hit three times, definitely with race and the culture and with color. And then
Right.
on top of that, with gender, I feel like and this is something that has translated into my own life as well. Just that feeling of, am I too masculine? Am I not feminine enough? Or my like the women in my family, are we not feminine enough?
Right.
And just kind of feeling like that I'm always, I mean, not trying to, but just by being myself, stepping on people's toes, or just by
Right.
like saying something directly, not even in an aggressive way, but just saying something directly is just taken a totally different way
Right.
than it would be from a white male. They
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
so many things and no one questions a thing. But if you just
Right.
question someone's intentions with you or put up a simple boundary in a calm, cool, collected way, all of a sudden you're seen as aggressive.
Yeah.
And I definitely see that coming into play. I, Gender relationships are so interwoven, so I feel like I'm going back and forth, but definitely relationships, I would say that in my experience, people prefer to not date dark skinned women or
Yeah.
any Black woman who is seen as being aggressive or
Yeah.
assertive or strong or can work for herself or independent.
Yeah.
And so I do definitely think that that in gender, femininity is seen through a very white lens, you know, being
Right.
fragile, helpless, needing someone to come and save you. You know, those are the things that were preferred in white women, you know, and still are, you know, in our
Right.
society, is basically this idea of a helpless, weak, dependent kind of person. And
Right.
so, when on the flip side of that, being a Black woman who is not those things, I feel like it definitely, um, like I said, it makes people, uh, or it makes you even question. I mean, it's made me question definitely,
Yeah.
like, am I masculine? And then to
Yeah.
realize, like, no, I'm
I'm just
just, you know,
assertive.
yeah, I'm just
Right.
assertive. And so, and I do definitely feel that the same way when it comes, like you said, with gender. I never really thought about that because I don't know why I've never I don't know why. I've been a lot around a lot of light skinned women and different darker shades of men and women, but I don't think I've spent enough time with lighter skinned men too. But that makes total sense. That makes total sense. I mean, you definitely see it in the media, that's for
Yeah.
sure. Like seeing people, you know, light skinned men as being soft or unable to provide or protect for people. So that definitely makes sense. And I think um without like going too much down a rabbit hole, I feel like it definitely even starts to intersect not just between male and female gender, but also when it comes to transgender people or,
Yeah.
you know, non-binary folks. I just feel like, you know, like even more so, like if you're a non-binary person who, you know, depending on how people perceive you, right? Depending
Yeah.
on if they perceive you as being more feminine or more masculine and your color, that can complicate things on top of being, you know, non-binary or trans or LGBT.
Right.
So yeah.
I definitely. I also noticed that with um 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 like with or studs or masculine women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like people categorize them sometimes based on their color as well. I feel like some of the words used, like when I've seen people describe what the difference was between, like stud and like a dyke. The they would say are they would mention a man. There would be like the so and so types. They would mention a man, and the man would usually be a darker skinned black male. So I feel like if you're a masculine woman, there's like an acceptable type of masculine woman, and there's a non-acceptable type of masculine woman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like that really depends on your color as well. Um, but colorism runs rampant in the LGBT community as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
definitely so. I might even argue that as far as in dating and marriage, it sometimes can be more, but it can, especially if you're talking about with like um, because from people that I've talked to as far as like gay males, I've heard the things that they said, and then from personally talking to other women, I've heard the things that they've said. So, um, just to piggyback off your point about people of like not gender non-conforming people or yeah,
Right.
so
It translates across
yeah,
gender.
it just it really does it really does translate. Yeah,
Right. And I think that's interesting because um you know, that you make a good point, and I think that that is interesting because you know when I guess you could say heterosexual couples when they are dating, you know, you have that whole other level of when they take it to when an interracial heterosexual couple is dating and they're taken to the next level and they're starting to talking about children and all those different things. You know, there's layers of complexity to that too, and especially well it could be from the partner, but if it is, then might want to re-question that relationship, but I've
Maybe
definitely
won't.
right experienced with myself and with family members. Definitely like the families, like their perceptions
Yeah.
of like, oh, I'm gonna have a black, granddaughter or grandson or whatnot, grandchild. Or even, if it's a white mother and a black father, for example, and the mother's like, or the mother and the grandmother, the mother's parents, like, well, how do we do her hair? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
not, like this kind of like disconnect. Um, but definitely, this fear almost of
Yeah.
like the child's gonna come out like a monster or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
then of course, like, it comes out and everyone like usually like, a lot of people, at least in my family, that's how it was, like
Yeah.
my dad almost had to cut ties with some of his family members just because they were like, why are you dating a black woman and blah blah blah. Then after I'm born, they meet me, it's like a whole different story. And, I mean, I guess that's a good thing. I guess that's a, it, I guess, I guess you could say it's a story that ended better than most, but
Right.
still, it's just that stigma of, of having a black child or a child that's going to be darker skinned than you, or is a child going to look like you, or be perceived to not be your child. That's another thing. Like a lot of times when I was with my dad, people didn't believe that I
Mhm.
was his child, and like
Yeah.
so. But so it's interesting, kind of the, like I said, heterosexual couples who have children, their own children, versus LGBTQ. Um, and another thing I was going to mention, I keep, oh, another thing I was going to mention too is about, you mentioned with police violence.
Yeah.
And I've definitely, it's so interesting, like I said, because I mean, it's not like, total scientific, study but as far as I guess not, non-formal case study, it's just been interesting seeing myself and my niece grow up together, like I said, because we're the same age, everything, we're very similar, except for our color. And so just even like my experience with police versus her experience with police. I mean, I've had bad experience with police. Don't get me wrong. I've had, cops
Yeah.
that are totally racist and everything. But, the fact that when, I still feel like if there's something going on,
Right.
I don't want to call the cops, but I feel like there's a certain level to which I say, like, okay, at this level, I would feel
Yeah.
more safe calling the police than not calling the police, right?
Right. No, I
Whereas
understand that.
whereas her bar is totally different. Like mine is like, okay, at this level, I would call the police. Hers is like
Yeah.
almost never, like no, like especially
Right.
depending on where she's at, it's
Yeah.
like that's just going to make the whole situation worse. Like I said, depending
Right.
because
Right.
some
Right.
places are obviously a lot more intense with police violence, even though violence amongst the black community of police is a constant thing. But some areas are just way, it's just, I guess, like a scale. So,
Yeah.
but even that, like realizing, like, oh my God, like this happened in the neighborhood, and it's like, like the cop, it's worse to call the cops than just to, you know what I mean? Like
No. Yeah. The
handle it
fear of
yourself.
death.
So,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's that's definitely you know, that was definitely like an eye opener. Like I said, because being a young adult, getting older, you see these different levels. You go to school and then you go to college and then you're an adult. So, and some of these things are present the whole time, but we don't pick up on it. And that's real quick what I wanted to mention too, when we're talking about colorism and preference. A lot of it, some of it is conscious, right? Like we're
Yeah.
making a conscious decision, and some of it is subconscious,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you said, like sometimes people, they like you said, the girl who preferred date darker black men because her
It's her
dad
death.
was
Yeah.
darker, and like sometimes we don't realize it. Like for me, I could say like I don't really have a preference, but obviously subconsciously there's people I prefer. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people I get along with more, or like I mentioned, I haven't really dated to an extent dated black men, but dating Native American men and Hispanic men, dating darker, like
Right.
someone could say like, oh, well, that's because I grew up around dark skinned people and that's who I
Right.
feel comfortable with. Like, it's not something that I'm like, ew, I wouldn't date somebody who's light skinned, but it's just a subconscious, I
Thing.
guess, comfortability, if you will.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
so I guess that comes into play too. Like, kind of questioning. Well, it's always good to be a critical thinker, I think,
Yeah.
and question why we do anything that we do, but especially when it comes to the people we love or the people that we want to include in our lives and why we're doing that. And if it's based in uh, racial violence, racism, and colorism, which is racial violence,
Right.
then that's where we really need to take a step back and start reflecting and making some changes.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. All right. So our next question is, okay. Do you believe you have ever been discriminated against on the basis of your skin tone?
Um, I guess like treated differently,
Yeah,
really,
treated
right? Yeah.
differently. Yeah.
I would definitely say that, like I said, I feel like white people and lighter skinned people um, definitely find me more palatable.
Mhm.
So I'm treated with like more preference in that regard. Um, but I definitely do know that, like I said, a lot of white people that I meet that they think that I'm like Hispanic. So my lightness might be more palatable to them, but I definitely get questioned. The way that they ask is just kind of, or the way that they treat me is kind of almost like, are you legal? Like, are you from America? Are you legal? Or or just kind of
Yeah.
like assuming those kind of things, and just like, you brought us here, so yeah, I'm legal. Like, yeah, like totally different, different story, and I'm Native American, so yeah. I guess you can question my Irish or Polish heritage because that's probably the least
Right.
least
But
legal, but
everything else,
right, like, just no.
Native
But I
Americans started. Okay.
right,
Are you
exactly.
legal, Dominique?
Right, exactly. And so definitely, I know that I've been treated, I would definitely say I'm more accepted in the Black community at large than amongst white people. I mean, it's, I mean, I have experienced, people kind of assuming that um, I think I'm better than them, or I'm stuck up, or things like that. But you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and say that's acceptable or it's okay to treat somebody because of that. But, I just feel like I'm a strong person and I know who I am. And half the time, all I have to do is just be myself and be a kind person. And I feel like those people kind of soften up a little bit. And I do know that, uh, oh, I just got chills. That, Black people experiencing rampant colorism and racism, it's a trauma, like a knee-jerk reaction of like, I don't know how you're going to treat me because of how I've been treated by people who are either white or who are light like you.
Right.
So, I understand, and definitely being a survivor and having gone through trauma, I can understand being triggered. So that's the best way that I can explain it, is that I feel like sometimes, if people are triggered and not sure how I'm going to react, it's just one of those things where I'm like, I'm just be myself, be patient, be kind. Some people are just going to be that way anyway, or it takes more healing work for them. Some people are just assholes, so it's like, I don't know what that was all about anyway. But I feel like a lot of times that people do like just soften up and just kind of be yourself and just be humble, and then so in that regard, I don't I guess when I look at it that way, I don't feel like I'm discriminated against in the Black community. I mean, I can be, but I feel like the root of the whole issue is white supremacy. So I just kind
Right.
of
Right. Right.
focus on that. Like, I could be treated nicely, right, by and accepted, so to speak, or seem to be accepted by white people, but that doesn't mean they're my friend. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just like,
Uh-huh.
keep it in perspective, I guess, if that answers the question.
Yeah, that answers the question. Okay. Um. So how about amongst your? So you said amongst your dad's side of the family, which is the white side, they weren't accepting at first. How about your mom's side of the family, the Black people and the Native American people?
Um, well, I would definitely say, on my dad's side, it was mostly his like parents, because I'm not gonna make an excuse for it. I think his siblings were more of like a younger generation, like they were also born like the 60s and 70s, so they were more like educated, open-minded, and things like that. And then of course as time went on, there was a shift for the better. For my mom's side, interesting. Okay, so I'll kind of tell two stories. So for the Native American side, my mom's dad is Black and Native American,
Oh,
and from Carolina. So they've been Black and Native American for like 300 years.
yeah.
So just so with them, I would definitely say, it's just one of those things in North Carolina. There's a lot of Black people marrying Native people
Yeah,
and
there
white
is.
people.
There is.
So yeah, so in that regard, at least for my family, I don't there wasn't really anything, any pushback on her paternal side. And then on for my her maternal side, my grandma, um, I it was nothing really negative. I would just say that my grandmother definitely romanticized my my mom dating my dad. She was like, "Oh my goodness, like his eyes are blue like the Pacific Ocean." Like my mom's like, "You never even been to the Pacific Ocean." She's like, "I've seen pictures." So, just one of those things. I mean, and like you said, what's the difference between colorism and appreciation, or, preference, or so I mean, my grandmother, unfortunately, she passed away a couple months before I was born, so I wasn't able to ask her, because I would have loved to really ask her. But I do know that, um it's just interesting. Like growing up, my mom was lighter skinned as well, than my grandmother, because her father's Native American, so a little bit lighter. And so my mom, you know, faced some verbal abuse from mostly my grandmother, who was darker skinned, against her, like calling her yellow and Chiqui banana, just like the color of shit, and like just things like that. So, um, you know, I mean, the only thing I can say is, like I said, it's based out of um, struggling with self. I don't want to say self hatred, but in a way, like
Yeah.
hatred of colorism amongst the Black community. And but it's interesting that as she got older, she got more accepting. So I guess I could say for both of my grandparents, as they got older, they just became more open minded, which is good, because some old people just get old and meaner.
Yeah,
um,
that's it.
but yeah, so and then my two older siblings, I have two older siblings, and they have a different dad than I do. And their dad was Black, darker skin. And so, I don't know if they've I don't know their insights. Actually, now these questions would make some interesting conversations with them, because they're really open minded, and I feel like it'd be cool to have a conversation with them. But they're just, I feel like my brother and sister, they're old enough to be my aunt, uncle. Like my sister's 20 years older than me, and my brother's 16 years older than me. So being the baby of the family, I feel like, they're very protective of me and loving. And, so it'd just be interesting to hear their perspective, because they're probably, definitely have opinions, but hear their perspective outside of protecting me as a child. I mean, I'm like 27 now, but still, it's like, you're always my baby sister. But and my sister, she's expressed that, when she was younger, she was a part of the like one percenters. And so, she was like, I had, these ideals and things like that, that um certain beliefs about like white people and everything. And so she said, I don't know. She said, it's just, as I got older, I still, some of the things I still can't identify with being, Black power, and being in power, being Black and dark skin. She said, but like she said, as I get older, just, I guess I see more of a balanced view at the same
Yeah.
time. Or like, just perspective change. Like we have all these ideals, and they're not wrong or bad or anything like that. Or even extreme. Like I'm not saying they are, but as you get older, you kind of go through situations and scenarios in life where you say, okay, there's an exception to this or to that.
Thanks. Okay.
Yeah.
So my last two questions. Who is responsible for breaking the cycle of colorism, and do you think it'll ever end?
honestly, part of me, like, I know that, okay, let me start with this. I know there was an article several years ago, maybe even 10 years ago now, shoot, in the National Geographic about in 50 years, everybody's going to be beige and be multiracial and look like this or like this or like that. Um, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a scientist. I just kind of seeing history, I just kind of try to see history and seeing how, you can look back in your family tree and say, oh my goodness, I have a white ancestor or a black ancestor, or you know what I mean? And seeing how, I don't know, I just don't feel like that's really the case. I don't know. Like, I'm not a scientist, but I just feel like it's kind of like an idealism,
Yeah.
um, that if we all look the same or similar or have less of a
Right.
not
I
as
think
much
it'll
of a
be
gap
worse.
between us, yeah, that we're gonna get along. And no, I don't feel like that's gonna be the answer, because we'll find something, you know what I mean, that is still a preference or whatever. Really, we have to, and going back to your question, I feel like everybody is responsible. Like, I feel like everybody's responsible. But I'll kind of get back to that in a second. There's a clarification with that. But in addressing colorism, and I feel like that is what's going to break the mold of racial divide, and obviously acknowledging oppression and acknowledging discrimination, and making reparations, not just acknowledging it, but also making reparations for those things. But definitely, I mean, I would say that as people of color, we are, like you mentioned. I forget the term. I know you said white colorism and
Yeah.
intraracial, right?
Yeah. Intraracial. Yeah.
Intraracial,
Intraracial.
inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like experiencing intraracial colorism, we are kind of the, like, it comes from white standards, so they created it, but at the same time, I feel like we, being being oppressed by it, know the nuances, you
Right.
know like, sometimes even more. I would say most of the time even more, because now I feel like a lot of white privilege is so ingrained that people are just um, oblivious to it. Like, they're just so privilege like they
Yeah.
don't even realize it, like, so I feel like it's definitely up to us as people of color, as Black people, to acknowledge, to educate ourselves about colorism, acknowledge it within ourselves really first, like, and do the healing work inside of ourselves, because really colorism comes from from white supremacy, but it creates self-hatred and hatred amongst ourselves, and so I feel like doing that healing work, um, and starting in our family, starting amongst our friends, starting with those we're close to, and speaking about it in the community, but also, you know I guess there's a balance, and this is something I'm still trying to figure out, between, we are the experts unfortunately, because we're in the situation of how these things, of how colorism and racism affect us, but at the same time, it's not our
Oh.
burden to constantly educate white
Yeah.
people. Like, you spend money, support Black-owned businesses, and buy a
Right.
book and
Right. Do it
learn
yourself.
stuff. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, so I feel like, of course, we can get the ball rolling, but at the same time, I feel like there needs to be an initiation, and I feel like if it's really sincere, like, if white people are really sincere about addressing colorism, then they will take that step to, support Black authors and educators, and get educated, um, and really just listen, like, be students and listen to Black people, and be willing to not downplay our experiences or the experiences of dark skinned people.
Right. Right. Our
Yeah.
experience. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate talking with you today. I appreciate your perspective. Um, yeah, thank you.
Thank you too. I appreciate your perspective. Like, it's leaving me so much to, like, think about, and now I definitely want to read that book.
Yeah, it's really It's long. Yeah, it's long. But it's a good book, and it's got like it's a good book.
What's it
And
called? I'm gonna write it down. Visible no more. Okay.
it's a good book. Okay, so I have these books right here because I was about to do some book reviews. So I just want to suggest another book because they're right here. So this book right here, The Blacker the Berry. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before.
Not the book. The
This
saying.
is insane. Yeah, this is like the most. I think this is my favorite book about colorism. Um, so this is a good book, The Blacker the Berry. And then if you want just to like, I mean, you have a good understanding of colorism, but if you just want to read more about it, this is a really good book. It's called The Color Complex,
Okay.
and it's the politics of skin color among African Americans, and it actually has an updated one, but this is just the one that I have. I don't know if you ever heard of thrift books.
No, I
So
haven't.
their books are cheap. Like you can get, I got this for $3.99, this one for $3.99.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So they're cheap books. And then these are
Mhm.
two other good books. Toni Morrison, The Bluest Eye. This was like one of among the first books I think about colorism.
Mhm.
Um, and then Zora Neale Hurston. This is a really popular book. Their Eyes Were Watching God.
Watching
Um,
that. I've heard of that one.
so and that's about colorism too. So yeah, those are just some books. I just had them right here, so I'll just pass it along. But yeah. So thank you so much. It was nice meeting
Yeah. Nice to meet you too. I hope that this is helpful and just thank you for having me.
you. Thank you so much, Dominique. It was
Yeah.
nice meeting you. Okay. All right. So this is Shine with another episode of All Things Black. Thanks for watching.